Hey guys, and I'm here to talk about the series reading progress. Now, this is a video that I try to do every year, in which I talk about my progress from June of the past year until June of the current year. However, because I'm running so late with this video at this point in time, I'm just going to extend it. So I'm going to be talking about the books that I read between July 2024 and August 2025, so August included in those numbers. Originally I had foreseen to talk about September as well, but then it turned out that I still had a book that is part of a series planned for September that I haven't gotten around to, that I've been saving for the final week of September. And so rather than either pretending that I've already read it within this video or kind of like mentioning it as a given and then potentially running into the hazard of me, I don't know, DNFing it rather than finishing it or just plain not getting to it, I decided to leave off the month of September, which means that my overall numbers, I don't really have them. I've just looked it up, and so I have read 124 books in total during that period of time, but my editing self will have to do the calculation on how many of those books actually count towards the series that I will be talking about throughout this video. So in this video I'm going to go through it more or less chronologically, so month by month I'm going to let you know which series that I made progress in, which series that I started, all of that type of jazz. I'm going to be using a few different categories. The books that I'm not going to be talking about throughout this video are going to be books that are first of all, books that are standalones, but also books that I consider more as standalones. Books that might technically be part of a series, but I don't really consider that a series. It's like a series of, like companion novels, and even sometimes there might be a continuation to some extent, but to me that's not my intent. Going in isn't to read everything within that series. The best example that I can give for that, for example, is the Kamogawa Food Detectives. I've just read that book. If I had really absolutely loved this book, I might continue on within the series, but I also know that this is the type of series where every book is just like an iteration of the same concept. It's kind of like a hospital procedural or a case of the week type of episode on TV. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of just repeating the same formula. I like to see something new being done, and so I tend to steer clear of those types of sequels. I will often read one book within that type of series, but I don't very often go in and then read more within the series, because a lot of times that leads to disappointment for me personally. With that being said, let's go into the categories. So I will be talking about series that I've started, and it will most likely be the highest number again on this list. I will look at series that I've continued, so I had previously started the series and I've made further progress throughout this year. Series that I've completed, so I've read the final book within that one. Series that I've DNF'd, either because I couldn't even make it through the first book, or I have read the first book but I've decided that I have no interest in continuing on from there. And then this is like personal decision, but of course when we're looking at a series as a whole, but there is still the potential for you to do more than just start it or more than just complete it within the period that I'm talking about, within 1 year period. So if I've started a series and I've continued on with it, or if I've started a series and I've completed it, those will count twice basically. So a series that I've started and completed in the same year will count for start and completed. I will not count it again for continued based on the amount of books that I've read in it, but I do consider that, basically when we're looking at series progress, in my mind this is a balancing scale between the amount of series that I've started in a year and the amount of series that I've completed in a year, in the hope of kind of scaling things out. And so the continued books, they don't really have an impact in that. Of course they do, because they bring you closer to the completed, but it's not like, the more, it's not like continuing a series has an impact on your started versus completed balance in that regard. So for continued, it's not like I want every single book that I've read in the series to count ones within this scale of things, if that makes sense. This is a personal choice. You can also decide differently for yourself, of course, but that is just the rules by which I will be playing, which I wanted to clarify before for you guys, that if you see those numbers doubling, or if there are more numbers than series that I've talked about, then this is the reason why. So let's go over this. So we're starting off in July 2024. In July 2024, I made progress in 4 series, and 2 of those will be DNFs. So starting off, the first one is already a DNF. So I started The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri, which is the second book in the Burning Kingdom series, which unfortunately is a series that I have now DNF'd because I also DNF'd the book. So I was already not fully convinced with the first book within the series, and unfortunately the second book did not manage to turn things around. It did not go in a direction that leaned more towards the things that did work for me in book 1, and so unfortunately I had to DNF the series. Also need to point out that since I'm going to be talking about a lot of books here, I'm not going to go into any details when it comes to these series. I might give a very short explanation, like The Burning Kingdoms is an Indian-inspired fantasy that is sapphic, but I will not be going into more detail than that. Next up, I completed the series. So I completed the Rook and Rose series by M.A. Carey, which is basically a author duo. And this is The Labyrinth's Heart, third book within the series. I finished this series. It's a Venetian-inspired fantasy series involving a sort of like con artist as a protagonist. Love this series. Sad to have completed it, but there's a new M.A. Carey book coming out in 2026 apparently, so I'm very much looking forward to picking that one up when it arrives. Next up, I completed another series, and I completed the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams by reading The Poison Song. This is a difficult series to talk about. It's got vampires, it's got aliens, and that's about all I can really say about it in the shortest amount of possible words. This is a series that I'm not fully sold on. I enjoyed it, I enjoyed parts of it, but also it's not one that ever like fully managed to capture my interest, my attention, my heart. I mainly continued on with it because this was part of a read-along and because I wasn't hating on it. But if I had read it all by myself, would I have completed it as quickly as I did, or would I have stuck with it? That is uncertain to me from this point of time. Next up, I tried to read Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, and I just couldn't. Guys, you know, the writing in that first book is abysmal. It's horrible. So yeah, I just couldn't make it through. I have heard that it is better in the later books within the series, but I just cannot get myself to read through those first books because it was horrible. It was really bad writing. It was very amateurish, and apparently she wrote that when she was like 16 and there was almost no editing involved. But yeah, I just cannot. Okay. Next up we go into the month of August. In August I read the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. I started and continued it because I read like 5 books within the series within that month. So I read Guilt, Glint, Gleam, Glow and Gold, and then at that point in time Goldfinch wasn't out yet, which it was like a few months later or something like that, and I still haven't read it because Gold was not as good of a book as the first 4 are. I quite regularly go back to reread passages from like the first 4, but the 5th one I never reread parts of it, and I've heard not so great things about the 6th one. So I've heard from many people that this series kind of ends on a dud, and yeah, I haven't been like willing to explore that 6th book, I guess, because I feel like I would have to reread the 5th book in order to do so, because you know I know the general plot of this 5th book, but I do feel like I should probably revisit it if I ever want to go to that 6th book. So I don't know whether I'm DNFing this series or not, guys, but yeah, for the time being we've started and continued with it, but it is unfinished. This, by the way, is a romantasy series for those of you who are interested now, and it is a King Midas retelling. Next up, I read a volume of a manga series which is called The Masterful Cat is Depressed Again Today. I read volume 2, so I continued a series. In September then, September is always magical readathon month, and September 2024 was a success month because 2 of my favorite books of that year were read within the month of September. First up, I DNF'd a series. So I tried to start the Draconis Memoria series by Anthony Ryan by reading The Waking Fire. This was also for that read-along that I was hosting, so I was hosting a year of dragon books, and unfortunately this one was not a success. But I do feel like my attention was not on this book because of Every Book All at Once. So if you've been on my channel, you know that I was doing this series, and I started it in August that year actually, in which I was reading all of my books at the same time. And so I hadn't planned on that project at the beginning of the year. This was a project that just came along for spur of the moment, a brain fart that I actually went through with, and that completely derailed my plans for the second half of the year. And as a consequence, this series just felt like it was an obstacle. It was just making that project so much more difficult, and that project was now like the highest priority for me mentally. That was the thing that I wanted to be spending my time and my focus on. And so I very early on decided to DNF this series. I might return to Anthony Ryan's writing at some point, because I'm not entirely sure that I gave him like enough of a chance. It is very much possible that I just dismissed this book more out of practical considerations than because I actually wasn't enjoying it. It is too far gone from that time now for me to actually know that, so I might still read an Anthony Ryan. It might not be this one, it might be another one, but yeah, this is what happened at that point in time. But what I did read back then, because I did physically own it, luckily, because that was my favorite book of 2024, is The Silverblood Promise, the first book in the Last Legacy series by James Logan. This is a book that basically starts off with the death of our protagonist's father, and he is set off on a quest to find answers as a consequence of that, and then he gets embroiled into this bigger sort of like plots. I love The Silverblood Promise. I'm so looking forward to November when the sequel for this comes out. So I've only been able to start the series, not for a lack of willingness on my side, because the sequel just hasn't been out yet. Next up, I read Deathless by Rob J. Hayes. This is actually a series that I should talk about in conjunction with 2 other series. We'll get to those 2 other series when we hit December. But basically, Rob J. Hayes is a project in which he is writing 3 series at the same time. These 3 series are taking place in the same world, but they're set apart by the timeline in which they're told. So they're told across multiple centuries, and so the events of the first book, for example, are like ancient history to the second book, legend to the third book, and he's writing them simultaneously, meaning he will publish the first book in all 3 of them at the same time, and then he will publish the second in all 3 and stuff like that. Now, I love this concept, and I thought that that was a very interesting reading experience, but I feel like the concept is the best thing about this, and that I didn't really love any of these 3 books enough to want to continue. The only reason why I would want to continue is because I find that concept of looking at these 3 different timelines and seeing events from other timelines reflected in the other series, that is just fascinating. But do I care enough about the plot points or the characters of any of these 3 series? No, unfortunately. So I have read all 3 books in these series, all 3 of these first books in the series, but honestly I feel like I should just DNF the series because I don't care enough to want to continue, and like most of the, like 2 out of the 3 are novellas, so it's not a big deal, but one of them was a really massive book that definitely took a lot of time, and you know, why would I put in that effort for a series that I just find conceptually interesting but that I don't have any other sort of attachment to. So yeah, Annals of the God Eaters, I started it, but I'm going to also mark it down as a DNF. Maybe I'll eventually get to it, but I really shouldn't. Like, future Cleo, think before you act. Next up, I read the second best book of 2024, which is The Will of the Many, first book in the Hierarchy series by James Islington. It's another series I started. The sequel to this comes out in November as well, so I get to be treated. I read for both of my favorite books in 2024 in the same month, and I am reading both of their sequels in the same week, hopefully. I'm gonna take the week off in order to read them, and I am just looking forward to that. I hope that they live up to my love of the first books. The Hierarchy is a Roman Empire inspired series in which we're looking at this orphan boy who basically has to infiltrate an academy to try and find its secrets while he is hiding his true identity from the world. Next up, we have a memoir called Empire, the first book in the Teixcalan duology, I believe, which is written by Arkady Martin. I started this series in 2024, and I do feel like it suffered a little bit as well from Every Book All at Once, because I do feel like I didn't have the mental capacity at that point in time to really spend on this book the mental capacity that this book needs. I do feel like I needed to put in more of an effort with this book than I was doing, than I had the possibility to do, because of how much I was tackling at the same time. You know, when you're reading 10 books or more at the same time, it is difficult to grasp everything happening in all of them, remember everything that is happening on all of them, and I definitely feel like some books suffered from that, and this one is one of them. But I do remember that conceptually, at the very least, I thought it was very interesting, so I am very much willing to revisit this book and continue on with the duology. Next, we move into October. In October 2024, I first off completed a series. So I completed the Imriel trilogy by reading Kushiel's Mercy by Jacqueline Carey, the third book in this series, and this is the second series in the overarching Kushiel's Legacy universe. So yes, this is a series comprising of 3 trilogies, and I gotta say the second one is not my favorite. I did still enjoy it, but I really love the first one, and I do want to continue on with the third one at some point. The third one, I think, like my impression is that it is more separate from the other 2. For the Imriel trilogy, I would definitely say it's best to have read the Kushiel trilogy first, mainly actually in the fact that it's like reading the Kushiel trilogy after having read the Imriel trilogy, you are spoiled for a lot. But I don't think that that is the case with the third one, but I could be mistaken there. Then I DNF'd a book and a series by DNFing The Principle of Moments by Esme Jakimi Pearson, the first book in the Order of Legends. This book, it just didn't work because I DNF'd this 10 pages away from the end. And that's how you know that it really wasn't working for me, because I could not even bother with those final 10 pages. In those final 10 pages, I was just like, you know what? I really don't care how this ends. You know, a lot of times when you're that close to the ending, you just want to finish the book because you just want to know how it ends. I didn't even want to know it there. I was just like going through the motions, and considering my Every Book All at Once project, it was just like, why am I even still bothering? Every single page that I read in this book is making Every Book All at Once more difficult, is taking time away from finishing that project. And for that reason, it's just crazy, because this book is over 500 pages, you know. I read almost 500 pages in order to DNF the book then. I should have DNF'd way earlier. But I guess the reason why I didn't was because this was part of my magical readathon TBR, but honestly, girl, use a scroll next time to to be able to DNF a book, because yeah, this just was not worth it for me. Next up, we have Bloodguard by C.C. Robson, first book in the Old Earth series, a series that I started. This is a romantasy that is very much sort of like Gladiator inspired, and while I wouldn't go as far as saying that I'm DNFing this series, it's also very low on my priority. Like, I didn't feel after book 1 like, oh, I need to continue. I enjoyed it, sure, but it's not like my favorite type. Romantasy isn't really my genre. I've been dabbling in it from time to time, but it just doesn't fully work for me, you know? Like, it doesn't have the things that trigger me, the things that I really enjoy about literature, and so it can be a fun read during, but that's about it. And so that's also how I feel about Bloodguard. I enjoyed it during, but I've never thought about this book since reading it. I've never been like, oh, when is a sequel to that coming out, you know? So yeah, it'll probably be a silent DNF over time, as in I'll never prioritize getting to the sequel, but you know, I'm open to it. I am open to reading the sequel. And then a series that I DNF'd. I actually think that this is an unsuccessful re-attempt at reading this book, because for Magical Readathon this really fit a prompt, and this was a Illumicrate book that I had previously tried and had not been able to get into, that I wanted to attempt again in hopes of me getting along with it better, but the second time the same thing happened. I was just not invested at all. I couldn't care about the characters or what was happening, and so I had to DNF. And so this is Phantom Folk by Eliza Chan, the first book in the Drowned World series, a series that I therefore DNF'd. Moving on to November. In November, technically speaking, nothing happens. I reread 2 books in order to be able to complete a series in December. So moving on to December, I finished the Ending Fire trilogy by Sara El-Arifi. So I had reread the first 2 books within that series in November in order for me to read the Ending Fire for the first time in December and read and finish that trilogy. So this counts as a completed series. Unfortunately, a little bit of a downer. The third book wasn't as good as the first one had been. But I am hopeful that I will find back the excitement I had after reading the first book within that series in a future release from Sara El-Arifi, because unfortunately her second series also didn't work out for me. Yeah, that's it for we're already in December, so that's not it for December. For December, I also finished a duology. I finished the Flesh and False Gods duology by Chloe Gong by rereading Immortal Longings and reading Vilest Things for the first time. This is a completed series. It's an Antony and Cleopatra retelling in a dystopian world where you can hop into another person's body and basically like body swap your soul. And yeah, we're following our protagonist who's entering into this competition, which is kind of like, I mean, to use a modern reference, which I don't like to do, it's kind of Squid Game-like as far as I'm aware, because I haven't watched Squid Game, but you know, otherwise we can refer to Hunger Games or the actual original Battle Royale. Next up, I started a new series, which is the Shattered Kingdom series by Devin Madsen by Reading Between Dragons and Their Wrath. I really enjoyed this book a whole lot. I'm very much looking forward to continuing the series whenever I have the opportunity, because as far as I'm aware, the sequel isn't out yet. Next up, let me just mention here the 2 other Rob J. Hayes books that I mentioned earlier. So I started Age of the God Eater and I started Archive of the God Eater by reading Herald and Demon. So these are 2 series that I've started and that we shall count as DNFs. Next up, I read Mistress of Lies, the first book in the Age of Blood by K.M. Emright, a vampire series. I have the second book behind me somewhere because this arrived 2 weeks ago or so. So I am continuing with that series, but currently it is just counting as started. Next up, the final thing that I did in 2024 is I started a series, I started The Gods Below. Series name is The Hollow Covenant by Andrea Stewart. I'm not fully sold on it. I think it started off really strong and I really enjoyed half of the storyline, but the other storyline I was not as interested in. Basically, this is a world where sort of like terraforming happens occasionally, where like a god will like cleanse a certain section of the map, but then the people within that are changed irrevocably. And so at the beginning of this book, this is just about to happen, and so 2 sisters are trying to find their way across the border before this happens. However, one of them makes it across and the other stays and will be changed forever. And so we follow both sides of this sisterhood. We follow the sister who has made it out and the sister who has been changed. Next up, moving into 2025. In January 2025, I read The Starlight Heir by Emily Howard, which is the first in a series. This is also a romantasy, and it's also a series that I started and potentially, I mean, I should just consider this a DNF because I don't really remember what happens in it. I know that she was like a blacksmith and that she's sent off to like the capital for a contest to win the prince's heart, but there are secrets in her past that she isn't even aware of. That I know. I know the concept of this series. And I think the prince is like a really bad person and she falls for somebody else in the end. But like, yeah, I don't know enough about this series. I definitely enjoyed Bloodguard more than I enjoyed this one, for example. So with Bloodguard, I'm like, yeah, I'm open to reading the sequel. With this one, I'm like, yeah, I started, so I might as well continue, but there's really nothing driving me to continue, so let's consider it a DNF. Next up, I spent most of that month, I started that month with a reread that then will continue into the month of February. So let's just talk about January and February together here. So in January, I reread Free the Darkness and King's Dark Tidings, no, Reign of Madness by Cal Kate, which is part of the King's Dark Tidings series. And then in February, I reread Legends of Anne, Kingdoms and Chaos, Dragons and Demons within that series in order to, for the first time, be able to read Knights of Shadows. If you are not new to this channel, you are also not new to my love of King's Dark Tidings. I love this series. It is a fantasy series by an independent author in which we are looking at a character called Reskin, who was trained as a young boy to be this ruthless killer, this ultimate fighter. He has been trained in all fighting skills, all manners of subterfuge, court intrigue, all of those things. But the one thing that he has never been trained in is human interaction, is in understanding, exploring and expressing his feelings. And so due to circumstances, he is let out into the world without any real guidance. The only guidance he has are two instructions that he overheard but probably misheard, and that is to protect and honor his friends and to kill with conscience. However, these are two concepts that he does not understand, and so we follow him as he stumbles upon people along the way, makes friendships due to preconceptions or like miscommunication that others have of his behavior and the way that he reacts to things that they say. But yeah, I just love I love this series. It does have like its fair bit of silliness and of sort of like female lust for our protagonist, but I definitely feel like, especially the further along we get into this series, the more Reskin starts to understand feelings and be able to express them. He's still miles behind on where he should be in his emotional development, but the further along we see him along that path, the more interesting in my opinion. Next up, in the month of March, I started a manga series. So I started Witch Hat Atelier by reading volume 1, and I am a little bit upset about the fact that I still haven't continued. March 2025, we are 5 months later and I still haven't continued on with that. I really enjoyed the first book in Witch Hat Atelier and I definitely do want to continue. Next up, I started, and this is even worse, I started Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb, the first book in the Tawny Man series, and yeah, I know at that point in time I was starting to focus on another series that just was much more important for me because of having said that I was buddy reading it. So yeah, this one just suffered from other plans, I guess, and at this point in time I almost feel like I need to reread Tawny Man. Not really, I do feel like I have enough of a understanding of the basic plot of this book. Maybe I need to read a summary somewhere to just know like what the reveals were towards the end potentially. So, bringing us to April. In April I started a new series, which is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, which is a female coven series that has great representation and that mainly centers around differences of opinion around the trans experience. I really enjoyed the series a whole lot, and so as a consequence I have also read more than that in the meantime. Next up, I started the Copenhagen trilogy by Tove Ditlevsen by reading Childhoods. I enjoyed that book. I definitely wasn't like as sold on it as many people that I know, and as a consequence I've not prioritized continuing on with the series, even though my mother has all 3 of them, so I definitely could have. Then I reread A Natural History of Dragons in order to read for the first time The Tropics of Serpents, a memoir of Lady Trent by Mary Brennan, so this is a series that I continued. Next up, I've started The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, the first book in the Dandelion Dynasty, and this series name is gonna appear quite a fair few times still within this video. Next up, I started yet another series. So I started 4 series within that month. I read The Skin by J.E. Hannaford, which is the first big book in the Black Hind's wake, which is another series that I'm unsure about whether I'm going to continue or not. I had an okay time with this book, but also not to the extent that I'm like, oh yeah, I want to read the sequel to it. So, but the sequel has a really gorgeous cover, so maybe still. May 2025, I read the first book on the calculation of volume, so volume 1 of that, by Solveig Ball, and I definitely want to continue with that. I enjoyed that book a whole lot, and I thought that was just a super interesting execution for a time loop novel. Basically our protagonist is stuck in a time loop, but rather than your sort of like typical time loop where no matter what you do you have no impact on what happens, here we actually see that her presence within this time loop does have an impact. The more she goes to the grocery stores and buys stuff there, the later on when she is stuck in her, like, let's say 100th reiteration of the same day, this item might no longer be available in the supermarket because she has basically taken all the stock out. So there is some level of presence that she has on the world, so making it an impure time loop, which I just found super interesting. Next up, in June 2025, we read The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu, second book in the Dandelion Dynasty, and you will see that nothing will happen with the numbers at the bottom because I'm not counting this as a continued, because of course we will get to complete the series still within this video. In July 2025 we have much happening again. So first up, I started A Song of Legends Lost, the first book in the Invoker trilogy by M.H. Allende, so this is a series started. I read Pets by Kweki Emezi, which is technically a series. This might be a companion series, in which case I was doubting whether I was going to include it, but because I love this one so much and I knew when I finished it that I was one day going to read Bitter, I have included this one in this video. Next up, I read volume 11 in Saga, which is a comic book series by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I have since, I think, wrapped my head around the fact that I'm DNFing this series, because at this point in time the only reason that I'm still reading it is because this is a series that I'm reading, and it's not like I'm looking forward to it, it's not like I get great enjoyment out of reading them anymore, so why am I still reading them? So I'm DNFing. And let me pause. Next up, I continued with the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series by reading The Shadow Cabinet, so that's the series that overall I've started and continued. I've actually also read the prequel novella, which is Queen Bee, but I'm not really counting that, but in any case, I haven't completed this series, so even if I would count it as continued, I already have a book for continued, so it doesn't change anything about the facts. Next up, I started another series by reading The Sapling Cage, first book in the Daughters of the Empty Throne series by Margaret Killjoy. And then I debated about including this one as well, which is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Césaire, which has a sequel, and I might read it in October, which is why I decided to include it, because can I go without reading that sequel? Absolutely. But I also did have, I mean, a good time is saying much, but I did enjoy listening to that audiobook to some extent in a weird way, because it did also unlock childhood trauma. But yeah, I'm still unsure about it, because in the end, yeah, I don't know. But because I might pick it up in October, I decided to include this one here, because I'm not fully sold yet on not reading the sequel. Next up, August 2025, the final month that we are going to be tackling within this video, I started and continued Spy X Family Volume 1 and 2, therefore. So this is a manga series that I've also started this year, and that I should be planning in more regularly to keep on going with it, because we saw what happened with Witch Hat Atelier, and so this one I do want to definitely make some more progress in on a regular basis. Next up, I read The Veiled Throne and Speaking Bones by Ken Liu, thus completing the Dandelion Dynasty. So this is the only series across this 10-month time span that I started and finished in the same time span. But that also just depends on the time period that you're looking at, you know, like if my time period had started like 2 months earlier, then there were 2 series for which I could have set this. So this is just like randomness, I guess. If I would have stuck to the normal time span, so from July to June, then actually there would have been none, because the Dandelion Dynasty series would not have been finished within that time period. I would have started it because I started it in April, but I didn't complete it. So I would say that this is very much sort of like random. Like, it probably makes more sense to look at how many series do I finish within a year of having started a series, but those stats I don't have, I don't want to look at, so I cannot give you. But yeah, I did want to give a mention, a shout out to the fact that I started and finished this series within this time period, even though to some extent it is quite random. Next up, I started Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher, so starting the Saint of Steel series. And then the final book to mention here is The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang, first of the titular series, The Water Outlaws. And this is a book that I finished, but I am DNFing this series. Did not have a good enough time with The Water Outlaws to want to continue the series. So yeah, we're ending things with that one. So that means that these were all the series that I made any type of progress in within 2025, well, within this time period. I should kind of find a way to keep track of my series. I do have a tracker, I just never use it. I don't know why, but I just don't like my series tracker. My series tracker does not spark joy, and I'm never updating it. Maybe I should just do it in the story graph. I could potentially do it there, then it will probably be like something that I more organically do and that needs less maintenance on my end, because this video is always going to talk about what I made progress in, but it never talks about what is like what is leading a silent death, you know, what series do I have lingering in the background that I haven't made progress in this past time period of basically, what is it, 14 months, and therefore I'm very unlikely to make progress in ever, but that you guys will never hear about, because the trigger for me making this list is seeing a book appear within the time period that I'm looking at. So yeah, let me know if you've got like a magic, amazing series tracker that works for you, because for me personally, none of my series trackers have ever really worked in the sense that I've been excited about keeping them up to date. But so yeah, that's my series progress from July 2024 up until the end of August 2025. Let me know what you were most excited about making an appearance within this video, and what I should definitely get around to within the next year. What should be a series that I prioritize that has been mentioned here, and feel free to maybe spark some chaos by mentioning something new. But so yeah, with that I'm gonna end this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!